Welcome to the AI GRC Coffee Break. Our guest today is Dominique West. Dominique West is a cybersecurity and AI governance executive, an executive advisor translating cyber risk into business strategy. Just to give a little hint to our talk today, if I need a human in the loop, I want Dominique West's team to be one of those humans in the loop. Grab your coffee. This is going to be a good one. Let's get into it.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching my presentation today. Let's jump right into it. Human in the loop is a concept that is being used as reassurance for the many ways that artificial intelligence can go wrong. For example, an organization introduces a new AI system, and if someone asks about the risks, the response usually goes something like this: "Don't worry, a human is still reviewing any decisions that we make." Now, I've personally seen this phrase when I've applied to jobs or even when I submitted a ticket for customer service help at the bank. Today, I want to take you along the journey of challenging the assumption that as long as a human body is present, the control is in place and effective. Organizations frequently claim to have human oversight, but many have never tested whether or not that designated person has received the right information or has the authority to intervene. Can they technically stop the system? And do they know how to return the organization to a safe operating state? If any of those steps can't or hasn't been validated, then the human may be present, but they are not providing meaningful oversight. Hi, it's such a pleasure to chat with you today. My name is Dominique West. Most people call me Damo. You're welcome to as well. I'm a cybersecurity and AI governance executive, founder, advisor, and leadership coach. For more than 14 years, I've worked at the intersection of technology, risk, compliance, and business leadership. Much of my work has involved translating those really complex cybersecurity issues into decisions that executives, board members, customers, and operational teams can understand and act on. In this chapter of my career, I'm bringing that experience into the governance questions emerging around artificial intelligence. I'm particularly interested in what happens when organizations describe something as a control, but the people expected to carry it out don't have the understanding, the authority, processes, or operational support needed to make it effective. So that brings us to the question I want to explore with you today, which is, can the human in the loop actually stop the AI? Think about an AI system that has the ability to do the following. It can flag financial transactions now, right? Or recommend removing someone's access from a system. Perhaps the AI is supporting a healthcare decision, or it's embedded in a self-governing, security tool that can contain or eliminate a perceived threat. The consequences for these scenarios are different, but the governance question I keep coming back to is the same. What can the human actually do when the AI gets it wrong? Before an organization describes human oversight as an actual effective AI control, it should put that control through four tests, which are understanding, authority, intervention, and recovery. The first is the understanding test, meaning, does the person have enough technical and operational context to understand the AI's output? Can it recognize its limitations and make an independent judgment? A reviewer cannot challenge a decision if all they see is output. We know how long output can get, but they have no context behind it. They need enough information to understand what the system recommended, why the decision matters, and what indicators should they look out for that may suggest that these results are unreliable. So a great example is I use generative AI pretty often, right? And so generative AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whichever one that you prefer, right? I have a rule. Any outputs must provide links to the source, why they suggest this output, how it ties into the goals or outcomes that I'm expecting. I give a lot of context. And this doesn't mean that every person overseeing an AI system needs to be an AI engineer, but you do need enough technical understanding to question what the system is doing. And if you're implementing an AI system, you need to make sure that someone can translate the model's technical details into practical information that the reviewer can use. And so they should understand some questions like what data informs the output? What is the system designed to do? Where is it known to be unreliable? What factors could cause maybe the recommendations to be wrong? You also need to know what an unusual or high risk result looks like, when human judgment should take priority, and who should you contact when the issue requires some deeper technical expertise. Your human reviewer should also have clear guidance on when to question the output, how to escalate the decision. Can they override a recommendation, right? Or can they stop the system altogether? Effective oversight is not about understanding every single line of code. It's assuring that you can recognize risks, challenge the output, and make a sound decision. Remember, human oversight only works when the person in the loop receives the right information at the right time and has the authority to act on it. Which leads to the second test, the authority test, meaning does the person have clear authority to intervene? Many governance documents assign responsibility without resigning power. A reviewer may be held responsible for evaluating an AI driven decision while still lacking the organizational authority to challenge it. They may face pressure to accept the system's recommendation. They may feel pressure to defer to the vendor's expertise, right? Or perhaps they don't, they avoid altogether because raising a concern could delay an important business process. And we know organizations don't have toleration for delays. To determine whether authority is real, organizations have to look beyond the AI policies you create. What decisions can the reviewer reject? Can they delay the process while a concern is investigated? Who supports them? Important. Who supports them if the AI's recommendation is backed by a senior leader or an important vendor or a business deadline, like a sales deadline? And what happens to an employee after they raise a concern? Authority is not established simply because a document says the reviewer can challenge the AI. You know it's in place when decisions are clear, escalation is supported, system access allows you to act, and the organization's culture does not punish them for exercising sound judgment. If the reviewer cannot override the result, escalate an issue, or pause the process without being penalized, unfortunately, I'm gonna be honest with you, an organization has not created meaningful oversight. It has just created the appearance of it. All right, let's get into our third test. This is about intervention. Intervention is about making sure there is a practical way to pause, disable, isolate, or roll back the AI enabled process if something hits the fan. This becomes especially important when AI is embedded inside a third party product connected to your most sensitive systems. The right intervention will depend on the system and the potential consequences. In some cases, the reviewer may only need to reject an individual recommendation. In others, the organization may need to revoke the AI's access, right, or disable an automated action, perhaps disconnect a vendor integration, return back to a previous model version, or temporarily suspend the system altogether. Now, organizations need to expand their change management and incident response processes to account for AI specific behavior. Change management should define, what happens when the model, its data, perhaps its permissions, integrations, or the way it's being used changes. While your incident response should address what happens when an AI system produces harmful, unreliable, unauthorized, or unexpected results. The plan should establish who can declare an incident, who can authorize containment, what evidence must be preserved, how affected decisions will be identified, and when you should bring in legal, privacy, security, compliance, communications, or business leadership, because it gets that real sometimes. Now, our previous steps talked about intervention, which is asking, whether the organization can contain the problem. But stopping AI creates another question. It's just question on question here. What happens next? Right? That brings us to recovery. Recovery testing asks us if the AI is stopped, can the organization continue operating safely and return the system to a controlled state? Recovery always begins, this is like fundamental security, right? Recovery begins with having effective backups. If the AI supports a critical decision or business process, the org needs to have a tested way to continue without it. That may mean returning to a decision to a qualified human, reverting to a previous process, restoring a known good model, right, or configuration, or temporarily limiting the services being offered. Now, this fallback must be realistic for the expected duration of the disruption. A manual process that works for 10 cases may fail when things scale and employees suddenly have to review 10,000 cases. Recovery must also adjust the decisions the AI made before it was stopped, right? So the organization may need to be able to identify affected people, the transactions, or whatever actions and determine whether or not these outcomes need to be reviewed, reversed, corrected, or communicated. Restoring the technology is not enough if the consequences of the failure remain unresolved. Finally, returning the AI to service should require evidence that the problem has been addressed. The organization should define who approves restoration, what testing must occur during this process, whether or not risk assessment needs to be updated, and what additional monitoring is required after the system returns. That way, if the vendor controls the AI, those responsibilities and restoration criteria should be agreed upon in your contract way before an incident occurs. So, therefore, a recovery plan is not simply a restart procedure. It is the organization's ability to maintain safe operations, address the impact of the failure, and demonstrate that the AI can be trusted to resume its role. This is where AI governance becomes operational resilience. Now, the goal is not to keep a person near the technology so we could just say there's a human in the loop or human involvement. The goal is to make sure that the organization can recognize harm, make a decision, take action, and recover safely. The measure of human oversight is not whether or not a person appears somewhere in the process, right? We got to think about how we're measuring authority and human in the loop as a effective control. It's whether or not that person can change the outcome when it matters. Because if they can't, then they're not functioning as an effective control. They're simply witnessing the decision. So, if your AI governance program lists human in the loop as a control, can you confidently say you've tested it? If you are, or perhaps a designated human reviewer, walk through a realistic failure scenario. What information would you be receiving? What decisions can you make? What actions can you take immediately? Who's there to support you? And do you know how your organization would recover? If those questions don't have clear answers, human oversight may exist on paper, but it is not ready to operate as an effective control. Meaning, your human oversight must pass all four tests. The reviewer must understand enough to challenge the system, have the authority to act, be able to intervene, and know when the organization can recover safely afterward. Ultimately, the measure of human oversight is not, again, whether a person appears in the process, but whether or not they can change the outcome. Time flies when you're having fun. I can't believe we're at the end. Thank you so much for watching. If what I spoke about today resonates with you, feel free to connect with me. I love yapping about all these topics. I share more topics around cybersecurity, governance and compliance, thought leadership, and a whole bunch more like books on my various platforms. This includes YouTube, LinkedIn, Substack, or my personal and business websites. I see you next time. Bye.